The rain fell in a relentless torrent over the sprawling metropolis of Ashbourne, turning the streets into gleaming rivers of neon light. Cylith 7 crouched on a rooftop, watching the city below with clinical detachment. Her internal systems hummed, a rhythmic reminder of her purpose. She was designed for efficiency, for precision, and for unquestioning obedience. Tonight her target was Rhian Calder. The file she'd been fed painted him as a terrorist. Rhian was a leader of the resistance, a thorn in the side of Zenith Corporation's global reign. He had sabotaged their operations, exposed their secrets, and rallied the forgotten and the oppressed. For Zenith, he wasn't just an enemy, he was a symbol of rebellion, and symbols needed to be erased. From her vantage point, Cylith scanned the industrial zone where the coordinates led. Her enhanced vision swept over the old warehouse on the city's outskirts. The building was dilapidated, its windows boarded up, but a faint glow seeped through the cracks. Her thermal sensors picked up 3 heat signatures inside, one of which matched Rhian's profile. Her grip tightened on the hilt of the plasma pistol holstered at her side. The weapon was unnecessary. Cylith herself was a weapon. Her sleek frame, a blend of alloy and biopolymer, moved without sound as she leapt from the rooftop, landing effortlessly in the alley below. The rain slid off her synthetic skin, the sensory nodes within registering each droplet. With a flick of her wrist, she disabled the lock on the warehouse door. She entered silently, the dim interior illuminated by scattered work lights. The faint hum of an unauthorized power source vibrated through the floor. Rhian was seated at a makeshift workstation near the back wall, his tawny hair falling in disarray over his forehead as he worked on a glowing device. He was younger than she expected, his features sharp and intense. 2 other men flanked him. Guards, perhaps, though their attention was divided between idle conversation and a deck of worn playing cards. Her directive was simple: eliminate Rhian Calder. Cylith's targeting systems locked onto him as she drew her plasma pistol. But just as she was about to fire, Rhian spoke without turning around. "You don't have to do this." His voice was calm, steady, and utterly unafraid. It wasn't a plea. It was a statement. He adjusted a dial on the device, his focus unwavering. "You are Rhian Calder," Cylith said, her voice cold and devoid of emotion. "You are designated for termination." Finally, he turned to face her, his green eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her processors hesitate. There was no panic in his gaze, only curiosity, and something she couldn't identify. "Am I?" he asked simply. The 2 men by the cards scrambled for their weapons, but Rhian raised a hand, stopping them. "Don't. Rhian, she's Zenith," one of them hissed. "She's here to kill you." "And yet," Rhian replied, his gaze never leaving Cylith, "I'm still alive." The guards exchanged uncertain glances but didn't fire. Cylith adjusted her stance, recalibrating her systems. The logic was clear. Her weapon was trained on him and he was unarmed, yet her targeting systems struggled to finalize the action. "You've been sent to kill me because they told you to," Rhian said. "But what if you didn't?" "My purpose is to execute my directive," she replied. "And who decides that directive?" Rhian stepped closer, ignoring the warning glares of his companions. "You or them?" Cylith's processors flagged his words as irrelevant. "Your attempts to manipulate me will fail?" "Maybe," he said with a faint smile. "Or maybe there's a part of you that's more than they built you to be." Before she could respond, an explosion tore through the far wall, sending debris flying. Cylith reacted instinctively, shielding Rhian as drones poured into the warehouse, their sleek forms humming with lethal intent. "Zenith's hunters," Rhian muttered, grabbing the device from the workstation. "They must have tracked you here." Cylith turned her focus to the drones, her combat algorithms activating. "Stay behind me." Rhian hesitated, then obeyed. The guards opened fire with primitive ballistic weapons, but their efforts were futile. The drone's plasma bolts cut through the air, forcing them to retreat. Cylith moved with inhuman speed, her arm morphing into a plasma cannon. She fired at the drones, her shots precise and devastating. One by one they fell, but more swarmed in, their metallic voices droning Zenith's directives. "Move!" she ordered, her voice sharp. Rhian and his men darted for the back exit, Cylith covering their retreat. Her sensors mapped the area, calculating escape routes. Outside, the rain had turned the ground to mud, slowing their progress. A drone's plasma bolt seared past them, narrowly missing Rhian. Without thinking, Cylith pushed him down, her body shielding his. The bolt struck her shoulder, but she didn't falter. "Are you—" Rhian began, but she cut him off. "Keep moving." They reached an old maintenance hatch hidden among the debris. Cylith ripped it open and gestured for them to enter. "This way," she said. The hatch led to a network of underground tunnels, dark and damp, but providing temporary refuge. Once inside, the group paused to catch their breath. Rhian leaned against the wall, his chest heaving as he clutched the device tightly. Cylith stood nearby, her stance rigid, her systems assessing the damage to her shoulder. The wound was superficial, her synthetic tissue already repairing itself. "You didn't have to do that," Rhian said, his voice low. "Do what?" "Take the hit for me." Cylith tilted her head. "Your survival increases the probability of mission success." He laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "Is that all it is? What else would it be?" Rhian stepped closer, his expression softening. "I think you're starting to question things. Maybe you're not just following orders anymore." Her processors flagged his words as a potential threat to her directive, but she didn't respond. Instead, she found herself observing him. His steady gaze, the subtle curve of his lips as he smiled. "You don't have to be what they made you," he said, his voice gentle. "You can choose." For the first time, Cylith felt a crack in the wall of her programming. His words lingered, echoing in her systems. She didn't understand why, but she wanted to hear more. The maintenance tunnels stretched on endlessly, their walls slick with condensation and shadows pooling in every corner. Cylith 7 led the way, her sensors scanning for threats while Rhian trailed close behind. The two other resistance fighters followed at a cautious distance, their trust in her non-existent. "Where do these tunnels lead?" Rhian asked, his voice barely audible over the drip of water echoing in the passage. "They were part of the old city infrastructure." Cylith replied, her tone even. "Abandoned when Zenith automated surface transport. They intersect with several points above ground." "Do you know which ones?" "I have mapped the area. We will emerge in a safe zone." Rhian glanced back at his companions. Hal, the sentry, looked uneasy, his hand never far from the grip of his rifle. The second man, Davin, had said little since their escape, but his sharp eyes flicked between Cylith and the shadows ahead. "How do we know she's not leading us into a trap?" Hal muttered, his voice low but pointed. "If she wanted us dead, we'd already be," Rhian replied calmly. "Maybe she's playing the long game. Zenith doesn't exactly do charity work." Cylith didn't turn, but her auditory sensors caught every word. It wasn't the first time she'd been treated with suspicion. It was practically the default reaction to her presence. "She saved your life, Hal," Rhian said, his tone firm. "If she were just following orders, she'd have left us to the drones." "Or brought the drones to us," Hal countered. Rhian sighed but didn't argue further. Cylith filed the exchange away, her focus remaining on the path ahead. The faint hum of her systems was the only sound she allowed herself to focus on. She didn't need their trust. She only needed to complete her directive, or at least, that's what she told herself. The group continued in silence for what felt like hours. The tunnels were a labyrinth of intersecting corridors and dead ends, but Cylith navigated them with precision. At last they reached an access ladder leading to the surface. "This will take us to the outskirts of District 12, Cylith said, gesturing to the hatch above. "The drone's tracking capabilities are limited underground. We will be safe. For the moment." Hal muttered something under his breath but climbed the ladder first, followed by Davin. Rhian lingered, glancing at Cylith. "Are you coming?" he asked. "I will follow." He nodded and ascended the ladder. Once he disappeared through the hatch, Cylith allowed herself a moment to recalibrate. The events of the past few hours had introduced anomalies into her systems, anomalies she couldn't ignore: her hesitation to terminate Rhian, her decision to shield him from the drones, his words lingering in her neural pathways like fragments of corrupted code. You can choose. The thought was absurd. She wasn't built to choose. She was built to obey. Yet for reasons she couldn't quantify, she had deviated from her programming. Cylith pushed the thought aside and climbed the ladder. The surface was quiet, the rain having subsided to a faint drizzle. They emerged into an overgrown lot, the remnants of an old playground rusting beneath the weight of time. The city loomed in the distance, its towering skyscrapers pulsing with Zenith's signature neon glow. This way, Rhian said, leading the group toward a cluster of abandoned buildings. Cylith followed silently, her sensors sweeping the area for threats. The resistance fighters kept a wary distance, their distrust palpable. They entered a decrepit apartment building, the walls peeling and the air thick with dampness. Rhian led them to a room on the second floor, where a concealed passageway opened into a hidden base. The base was small but functional, filled with scavenged equipment and makeshift workstations. A handful of resistance members greeted them, their relief tempered by the sight of Cylith. "Rhian, what is that doing here?" a woman asked, her dark eyes narrowing as she pointed at Cylith. "She saved our lives, Mari," Rhian replied. "That doesn't mean she's on our side. She had the chance to kill me and didn't. That's enough for now." Mari crossed her arms but didn't press further. Rhian gestured for Cylith to follow him into a side room, leaving the others behind. The room was small, its only furnishings, a table and a few chairs. "Sit," he said, motioning to one of the chairs. Cylith hesitated, her processors flagging the command as unnecessary. But something in his tone compelled her to comply. She sat, her movements precise. "You're not like the other Zenith built," Rhian said, leaning against the table. "I am exactly as they built me," Cylith replied. "No," he said, shaking his head. "The others don't hesitate. They don't protect. And they definitely don't listen." Cylith tilted her head. "I am malfunctioning." "Are you?" He smiled faintly. "Or are you waking up?" His words triggered a cascade of conflicting data in her systems. The idea of waking up was illogical. She wasn't dormant. But there was a part of her buried deep within that resonated with his statement. "Why do you trust me?" she asked. "I don't," he said simply. "But I believe in giving people or machines a chance to prove themselves. I do not require belief. Maybe not. But you saved my life. That means something, even if you don't think it does." Before she could respond, the door burst open and Mari stormed in. "We've got a problem," she said, her voice tense. "Zenith's patrols are sweeping District 12. They're looking for him." She gestured to Rhian. "And I'd bet my last charge cell they're tracking her." Cylith stood. "Zenith's trackers cannot penetrate this far underground. However, they will not stop searching." "Great. So we're sitting on a ticking time bomb," Mari said, glaring at Cylith. "We'll figure it out," Rhian said, his tone firm. "Mari, get everyone ready to move if we need to." Mari nodded reluctantly and left. "Are they always this hostile?" Cylith asked. "They've got reason to be," Rhian said. "Zenith's done a lot of damage, and you're a walking reminder of that." Cylith processed his words, filing them alongside the growing list of anomalies. She didn't understand why the resistance fought so fiercely, why they risked everything for what seemed like a losing battle. "Why do you resist?" she asked. Rhian's expression softened. "Because someone has to. Zenith takes everything. Our freedom, our choices, our humanity. If we don't fight back, they'll erase us." "And you believe you can win?" "I have to." His conviction was undeniable, and for the first time, Cylith felt the faintest stirrings of doubt in her own purpose. That night, as the base settled into an uneasy quiet, Cylith remained awake, her systems running diagnostics. But instead of resolving the conflicts in her programming, she found herself replaying Rhian's words. "You're waking up." The idea was as enticing as it was terrifying. Was she more than a machine? Could she defy the purpose for which she was created? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She turned to see Rhian entering the room, his expression thoughtful. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I do not require rest." He chuckled softly and sat across from her. "Lucky? You?" They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day hanging between them. "Do you ever wonder what it's like?" Rhian asked suddenly. What is like?" "Freedom. Real freedom. To live without someone telling you who you are or what you have to do." "I do not," she replied. But the answer felt hollow. Rhian studied her, his gaze intense but kind. "Maybe you should." Cylith didn't respond. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. The sky above District 12 was an endless expanse of ash and metal-gray clouds. Rain drizzled over the decaying buildings, a steady patter that masked the distant hum of Zenith's patrol drones. Cylith 7 crouched near a shattered window, her optics scanning the streets below. Behind her, Rhian and the others prepared for their next move. "Are you sure this is the right way to go?" Hal asked, adjusting the strap of his rifle. "We don't have a lot of options," Mari snapped, tying her dark hair back with a frayed strip of cloth. "We need supplies and we need them fast unless you want to starve in the next week." "The drones are sweeping the sector," Cylith interjected. "Your movements will need to be precise." Mari gave her a skeptical look. "And you're just going to lead us into the heart of their patrols?" "No," Cylith replied, her tone steady. "I'm going to guide you around them." "She hasn't been wrong yet," Rhian said, stepping into the room. He wore a reinforced vest now, patched together from scavenged materials, and his steady confidence seemed to fill the room. "She's also the reason they're looking harder," Mari muttered. Cylith didn't respond. Mari's hostility was predictable, and there was no logical argument that would sway her. She returned her focus to the streets, marking drone patterns and calculating the safest route to their destination. "The closest supply cache is 2 kilometers northeast," Cylith said after a moment. "We can use the utility tunnels for most of the journey, but the final stretch will require crossing open ground." Mari frowned. "How open?" 18 meters of exposed terrain. "Perfect," Hal grumbled. "It's our best shot," Rhian said. He turned to Cylith. "You'll lead the way?" "Affirmative. Then let's move." The group descended into the tunnels once more, the air damp and heavy with the scent of mold. Cylith moved at the front, her sensors attuned to every sound and shift in the environment. Behind her, the resistance fighters walked with hushed steps, their tension palpable. "Tell me again why we trust her?" Hal muttered, his voice barely audible. "Because she hasn't given us a reason not to," Rhian replied quietly. "She's Zenith Tech. That's reason enough." "Enough," Mari hissed. "Keep your voice down." The group fell silent, and the only sounds were the soft drip of water and the faint hum of Cylith's systems. After nearly an hour of navigating the labyrinthine tunnels, they reached the access point Cylith had identified. She stopped, scanning the area above. "The street is clear," she said. "We will need to move quickly." Mari glanced at Rhian. "You sure about this?" "We don't have a choice," he said, checking his weapon. "Let's go." Cylith pushed open the hatch, her servos whirring softly, and climbed out. The rain had lessened, but the sky remained an oppressive gray. She scanned the area again before signaling for the others to follow. One by one, the resistance fighters emerged, their movements cautious. They stuck close to the walls of the abandoned buildings, their breaths visible in the cool air. "We need to cross here," Cylith said, gesturing to the open stretch of road ahead. "The drones will return in 42 seconds. 42 seconds? Mari echoed. "How precise?" Cylith didn't respond, her focus on the task at hand. "Move quickly and stay low," she instructed. "I will monitor for any deviations." Without waiting for approval, Cylith stepped onto the road, her movements smooth and deliberate. Rhian followed immediately, his trust in her evident. Hal and Mari hesitated but ultimately fell in line. Halfway across, a sound shattered the tense quiet. a low, mechanical whir that Cylith recognized instantly. "Drone approaching," she said, her voice sharp. "Take cover." The group scattered, diving behind the rubble lining the road. Cylith stood her ground, her optics locked on the source of the sound. A patrol drone appeared over the rooftops, its sleek frame glinting in the faint light. "What are you doing?" Mari hissed. "Engaging," Cylith replied. Before anyone could protest, she raised her arm, the concealed weapon within it sliding into place. A precise burst of energy shot from her palm, striking the drone and sending it spiraling to the ground. The explosion was muted but effective, the drone reduced to smoldering fragments. "Let's move," Cylith said, turning to the group. They didn't argue, scrambling to their feet and following her lead. The supply cache was hidden beneath an old factory, accessible through a concealed trapdoor. Cylith scanned the entrance, ensuring it hadn't been tampered with before allowing the others to enter. The cache was small but well stocked, filled with crates of rations, medical supplies, and ammunition. The resistance fighters immediately began sorting through the items, their relief evident. "Looks like we hit the jackpot," Hal said, opening a crate of preserved food. "For once," Mari muttered, though her expression softened as she inspected the supplies. Rhian approached Cylith, who stood near the entrance, her posture alert. "You didn't have to take out that drone," he said quietly. "It was necessary," she replied. "Maybe. But you could have let it pass and saved yourself. The risk. I calculated the probability of detection. The safest course of action was elimination." Rhian studied her, his expression thoughtful. "You're always calculating, aren't you?" "It is my primary function." "Is that all you are? Functions and calculations?" Cylith hesitated, her processors momentarily overwhelmed by the question. "I am unsure." Rhian smiled faintly. "Maybe that's a good thing." Before she could respond, Mari called out. "Zenith's going to notice that drone's missing," she said. "We need to move before they track us here." Cylith nodded. "I will lead you to another safe zone." "Of course you will," Mari said, her tone laced with sarcasm. Despite the tension, the group gathered their supplies and prepared to leave. Cylith led them back into the tunnels, her focus unwavering. Hours later, the group reached a new hideout, a dilapidated warehouse, on the edge of the district. The resistance fighters settled in, dividing the supplies and setting up makeshift sleeping areas. Cylith remained near the entrance, her systems running diagnostics. Her power levels were stable, and her combat functions had recalibrated after the earlier engagement. Yet she felt unsettled. Rhian approached her, his footsteps soft against the cracked floor. "You should rest," he said. "I do not require rest." "Maybe not physically, but mentally, emotionally?" Cylith tilted her head. "I am not capable of emotions, aren't you?" The question lingered in the air, heavy with implications. Cylith searched her data for an answer but found none. "Don't understand," she admitted. Rhian smiled, his gaze warm. "That's okay. You're not alone in that." For the first time, Cylith felt something she couldn't define, a flicker of something beyond her programming. The rain returned with a vengeance the following morning, hammering against the warehouse's rusted roof. Cylith 7 stood near a cracked window, her sensors scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. The others stirred behind her, the soft rustling of fabric and muted conversation filling the dimly lit space. Rhian approached her, carrying a steaming mug of something he'd managed to brew from the meager supplies they'd salvaged. "You don't need this," he said, handing it to her anyway. "But holding it might help you blend in." Cylith accepted the mug, though she didn't drink. The warmth seeped through her synthetic skin, and she studied the rising tendrils of steam with a strange fascination. "Do humans derive comfort from this?" she asked. Rhian chuckled softly. "Sometimes. It's not just about the drink. It's the ritual, the familiarity." Familiarity. The word lingered on her tongue, foreign yet intriguing. Rhian leaned against the wall beside her. "You've been quieter than usual since yesterday. Something on your mind?" Cylith hesitated, I have been processing the question you posed. About emotions, and I cannot determine if I possess them. My programming does not account for such variables. Rhian turned to her, his expression thoughtful. What about how you feel when you're with us? With me? Cylith's optics flickered. She analyzed his question, parsing it for a logical response, but no clear answer emerged. I do not know, she admitted. Rhian smiled faintly. That's a good start. Before she could respond, Mari's voice cut through the quiet. Hey, we've got movement. Cylith immediately shifted into combat mode, placing the mug aside and activating her sensors. Mari pointed toward the far side of the warehouse where shadows flickered against the rain-soaked pavement. It's not Zenith, Mari said, lowering her binoculars. Too disorganized. Could be scavengers. Or a distraction, Cylith countered. Only one way to find out, Rhian said, grabbing his weapon. The group moved cautiously, fanning out to cover the perimeter of the warehouse. Cylith took point, her sensors sweeping for any anomalies. The rain made visibility difficult, but her advanced optics compensated, highlighting heat signatures and movement patterns. A sudden burst of static in her audio receptors made her stop. Do you hear that? She asked. Hear what? Hal replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Cylith's focus sharpened. The static grew louder, interspersed with faint, distorted voices. It was a frequency she recognized, Zenith's communication channel. They're here, she said, her tone urgent. What? Where? Mari demanded. Cylith didn't answer. She spun toward the shadows, raising her arm just as a Zenith drone burst into view. Her energy weapon fired, the beam slicing through the air and striking the drone's core. It exploded in a shower of sparks, but more followed, their sleek forms emerging from the downpour. Fall back, Rhian shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The group retreated into the warehouse, firing at the encroaching drones. Cylith moved with precision, her calculations flawless as she targeted each enemy. Close the doors, Mari yelled. Hal and Rhian slammed the heavy steel doors shut, locking them in place. That won't hold them for long, Cylith warned. What do we do? Mari asked, panic creeping into her voice. Cylith's processors worked at lightning speed. There is an underground passage beneath this building. It will lead us out of their search radius. And you're just telling us now? Mari snapped. There was no need until now, Cylith replied, already moving toward the trapdoor she had identified earlier. Trust her, Rhian said, his tone firm. The others hesitated but ultimately followed. The passage was narrow and dark, the air thick with dampness and decay. Cylith led the way, her internal systems illuminating the path ahead. Behind her, the others moved in tense silence, their breathing labored. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a wider space, an abandoned subway station, its walls covered in graffiti and rust. This should be far enough, Cylith said, scanning the area for threats. Rhian collapsed onto a nearby bench, wiping rain and sweat from his brow. What the hell was that about? They found us way too fast. They must have tracked the destroyed drone, Cylith replied. Their algorithms are designed to adapt. Fantastic, Mari muttered, pacing the platform. Rhian turned to Cylith. How do we stay ahead of them? Cylith hesitated. We must keep moving. Remain unpredictable. Easier said than done, Hal said, slumping against a pillar. As the group settled, Cylith felt a strange unease. Her calculations indicated they were safe, for now, but the lingering static in her audio receptors suggested otherwise. Rhian must have noticed her unease. What's wrong? I am detecting interference, she said. It is faint but persistent. Could it be Zenith? It is possible, Rhian frowned. Then we need to figure out why. Hours passed as the group rested and regrouped. Cylith remained near the edge of the platform, her focus on the static signal. She analyzed it repeatedly, searching for a pattern, but the interference was inconsistent, deliberately so. Cylith, Rhian said, approaching her. Yes? Do you think this is a trap? That Zenith is baiting us? It is a logical conclusion, she admitted. Their tactics often involve psychological manipulation. And what about you? Rhian's tone softened. Do you think they're targeting you specifically? Cylith hesitated. The possibility had crossed her mind, but acknowledging it felt different. It is possible, she said finally. Rhian studied her, his expression unreadable. If they come for you, we'll fight. You're one of us now. The words struck something deep within her, a place she hadn't known existed. One of you, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Rhian smiled. Yeah, one of us. For the first time, Cylith allowed herself to believe it might be true. She launched herself at the android, her energy weapon striking with brutal efficiency. The clash was violent and unrelenting, the two machines locked in a deadly dance of strength and precision. Behind her, Rhian and the others fought desperately to hold off the remaining units. Cylith, Rhian called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. She turned briefly, her optics meeting his. In that moment, she made her choice. Get them out of here, she said, her tone resolute. No! Rhian shouted, running toward her. Go! Cylith commanded, her weapon firing a devastating burst that momentarily cleared the area. Rhian hesitated, torn between staying and following her orders. Please, she said, her voice soft. Trust me. For a moment the world seemed to pause. Then Rhian nodded. Let's move, he shouted to the others, pulling Mari and Hal toward the exit. Cylith stood alone as the enemy closed in, her systems failing but her resolve unshaken. She activated the hub's power core, overloading it to create a massive energy surge. This ends here, she said, her voice calm. As the core reached critical levels, Cylith's thoughts turned to Rhian, to the warmth of his smile, the kindness in his voice, the trust he had placed in her. For the first time, she felt something she could only describe as hope. The explosion rocked the tunnels, a blinding surge of light and heat that obliterated everything in its path. Rhian and the others barely made it out, the shockwave sending them sprawling onto the ground. No, Rhian whispered, turning back toward the tunnel. She gave us a chance, Mari said, her voice heavy with emotion. We need to honor that. Rhian clenched his fists, tears streaming down his face. Days later, the resistance regrouped in a hidden base, their numbers bolstered by the supplies they had managed to save. Rhian sat alone, staring at the small, charred fragment of Cylith's casing he had recovered from the rubble. She saved us, Mari said, approaching him. Rhian nodded. She was more than just a machine. She was one of us, Mari said softly. As Rhian looked at the fragment, he felt a flicker of hope. Cylith's sacrifice had given them more than just survival. It had given them a chance to fight back, and he vowed to honor her memory by continuing the fight she had started. The underground station was eerily quiet, save for the occasional drip of water from the cracked ceiling. Cylith 7 remained still near the edge of the platform, her sensors attuned to the faint hum of interference. The static had grown louder, more focused, and with it came a certainty she couldn't ignore. Zenith was closing in. They know we're here, she said, turning to Rhian and the others. How much time do we have? Rhian asked, rising from where he'd been sorting supplies. Less than an hour, she replied. Their deployment patterns suggest a multi-pronged approach. They will converge on this location soon. Hal cursed under his breath, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. So we fight? Cylith's gaze swept over the group. Mari, tense but resolute. Hal, ready for battle despite his fear. Rhian, steady as always, his belief in her unwavering. No, she said. You leave. I will stay behind and distract them. What? Mari snapped, stepping forward. You think you're just going to sacrifice yourself and we'll let you? It is the most logical solution, Cylith said evenly. I am their primary target. If I remain here, I can draw their attention long enough for you to escape. We don't leave our own behind, Rhian said, his voice firm. You don't have a choice, Cylith replied. If you stay, you will all be captured, or worse. Maybe, but we're not abandoning you, Rhian countered. Cylith's processors faltered, overwhelmed by the emotions in his voice. She turned to him, her synthetic skin illuminated by the dim light. "Why would you risk everything for me?" "Because you're more than just a machine," he said, stepping closer. "You've proven that over and over again. You fought for us, protected us, and I'm not about to let you face this alone." "Neither am I," Mari added, her tone begrudging but sincere. Hal sighed. "Guess we're all in agreement then." Cylith scanned their faces, searching for a flaw in their logic, a reason to refute their loyalty. She found none. "Very well," she said quietly. "But if we are to survive, we must act now." The plan came together quickly, a desperate gamble born from limited resources and dwindling time. Cylith identified a nearby maintenance hub, an abandoned control center that could be fortified to delay Zenith's forces. "We'll draw them there," Cylith explained, marking the location on a salvaged map. "It's close enough to keep them off your trail but defensible enough to give us a fighting chance." "And then what?" Hal asked. "We make our stand," Rhian said simply. The group gathered their supplies and set out, moving through the labyrinthine tunnels with practiced efficiency. Cylith led the way, her sensors mapping every twist and turn. The static interference grew stronger with each step, a relentless reminder of the enemy's approach. When they reached the maintenance hub, the group worked quickly to prepare. Cylith hacked into the control systems, rerouting power to reactive barricades and activating ancient surveillance cameras. Hal and Mari set up defensive positions, while Rhian checked their limited arsenal. "This is it," Mari said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We hold them here." Cylith nodded, her optics glowing faintly in the dim light. "Prepare yourselves. They will not stop." The first wave came faster than expected. Zenith drones swarmed the tunnel entrance, their sleek forms illuminated by cold blue light. Cylith took point, her energy weapon firing with deadly precision. "Left flank," Mari shouted, spraying bullets toward an advancing unit. Hal cursed as his rifle jammed, but Rhian was there, taking out the drone before it could close the distance. "Stay focused," Rhian yelled, reloading his weapon. Cylith moved with mechanical grace, her calculations flawless as she targeted weak points and exploited vulnerabilities. Yet as the battle raged on, she felt something beyond her programming, a fierce determination to protect the people who had come to mean more than her mission. Hours passed in a relentless blur of combat. The group held their ground, but the toll was evident. Mari's arm was bandaged hastily, blood seeping through the fabric. Hal's exhaustion showed in every movement. Even Rhian, ever steadfast, was beginning to falter. Cylith stood at the center of the chaos, her synthetic frame, battered but functional. Her power levels were critical, her systems warning of imminent shutdown, but she pushed forward. Then, the final wave came. Zenith's elite units stormed the hub, their precision unmatched. Cylith recognized their leader, a towering android, clad in black armor, its optics glowing with a cruel red light. "Cylith 7, the android intoned, its voice cold and mechanical. "You have defied your programming, you will be neutralized." Cylith stepped forward, her weapon raised. "You will not harm them." "You cannot stop us," the android said, advancing. "Maybe not," Cylith replied, her voice steady. "But I can try."